Everyone, this is Mrs. Lindsay Pereira. Today we're going to start our first lesson in geometry. We are going to start off with defining points, lines, planes, as well as segments, rays. We're going to start working really with these, which is kind of the fundamentals of geometry here. So if you haven't printed the notes from this, you can definitely print the notes, pause the video, do that, and then come back and resume. Most of our notes will come from the student journal. However, there will definitely be days where they don't, and this just happens to be one of the days that they do not. So always keep that student journal. That's going to be really, really important throughout this class. Okay? So again, if you don't have these notes, go ahead and print them out and then come back and resume the video. All right, so below are some of our very foundational geometric terms. It's really important to understand what they are and how to actually write them. So geometry is very symbolic. So yes, a lot of you probably realize, what is a point? There's not actually a definition of it. It just says it's represented by a dot. Well, that could look something just like this. So there's a point, and it is represented by a capital letter. So again, capital letter here, and we literally would just say T. So if you see a capital letter in geometric examples, problems, and it just has one single capital letter, they are referring to a point. Okay? So a line, talk about a line, this extends without end in both directions. Okay, so we would represent that using arrows on both ends that it goes through both directions. So again, this extends indefinitely to the left, it extends indefinitely to the right. Okay, and again, we use arrowheads to represent that. And there's two different ways to name a point. We can either use 2 points. So in this case, I have 2 points on my line, A and B. Now there's an infinite amount of points on here, but these are ones that are highlighted. Now if I just wrote AB like this, that would not be correct. I actually have to put a little line above it. And you're going to notice whenever we talk about segments and rays, they always have a symbol above it. Okay? A point does not. It's just one single capital letter. So these are capital letters because they're points, and again, I draw a little line above it. The other way to name a line is if, and now I'm going to use italic here, but mine will not look very italic, and I'm sorry about that. But they use a lowercase letter, and they literally will write line, and then again, it's in italics, but mine just doesn't look very italic because it's hard to write that way. But in a book, you'll definitely be able to tell. I would say that traditionally, it's used more often with the capital letters and the little line above it. Again, not 3 letters, 2 of them. Okay, but it can be done either way. It's definitely very universal, but we'll probably use what we have here in blue most of the time. Okay. So a segment is part of a line that has 2 endpoints. So again, that's super important, part of a line. So I could actually use my exact same diagram here and represent that. So I'm going to write it in 2 separate ways here. I'm going to write it as if it was a segment, or I should say draw it, or I'm going to write it or draw it this way as if it's a line. But if I write, it's very similar to how you identify a line. You're going to use your 2 points, but again, it's the symbolic notation you put above those. So if I did a line that extends with the arrows, I'm talking about a line. If I'm talking about a segment, I have endpoints. It does not go on forever. So I would not actually include this here. So my line, I'm going to change my color here real quick so I can highlight that. My line is actually AB, but my segment is going to be, again, just drawn like this. So again, I know it stops at both of those. So not only is this my segment, but I can look at a diagram and refer to a segment that is on a line. So I'm only referring to what's between A and B because I have two endpoints here. Okay? Which also brings me to array. So again, array is a part of a line that begins at an endpoint and then extends indefinitely in another direction. So there's two different ways to draw this as well. Oops, sorry, I'm not sure how that popped up. Let me draw it. So again, I can refer to my line, which has A and B on it, or I could start it at A, draw it through B, and it extends through B. So here, order matters. Okay, so let me talk about that. If I go back here to a line and a segment, it doesn't matter if I say line AB, I could also say BA, as long as I have a line above it. And same idea for my segment. Doesn't matter what I start with, if it's A or B, that names this exact same segment. Not true with array. Since this is my endpoint, I must start with that. So it's A, B, and then it extends through. So again, I have my endpoint and it extends through B. So I put a little ray above it. It would not be this, BA. That is a different ray altogether. Okay, so if I'm referring only to A extending through B, I have to start with A. Now, on the line, I could go either direction. This would be a ray, but it would not be the same ray as AB. Okay, so if I want the exact same ray here, I would start at A, go through B. That would be the exact same one. Okay, so order is super important. That's really something to highlight there with array. Okay, so a plane. A plane is 2 dimensions. Typically, like if you just hold up a single piece of paper, that's what people think of as a plane. But it does extend indefinitely in both directions. When we draw it, we typically draw as if it's like a parallelogram. Okay. But again, it goes forever in all these directions. We just physically have to draw it on our piece of paper. So again, it looks like it ends, but it does not. Okay. So there's 2 different ways to name this one as well. So you have a lowercase italic letter. If you have that, you can name it by plain M. Or the other way you can name this is by 3 points that are on the plane. So I'm randomly putting some 3 points on there so that I could say plane ABC. Now I have to say these are used interchangeably as well. There's not one preference over the other. But this is how you name all these types of geometric figures. And this is going to be really important as we continue to go through geometry. We will use this all year. Okay, so let's take a look here at some examples. Name the figures below, first of all, by giving the actual term name. So is it a point, a line, array, a plane, etc.? And then specifically name it. So here's an example. So here's our plane. So in general, it's a plane. And then to name the specific one, we had to label plane with the 3 points, DEF. Okay. And again, please notice there is a big difference between using capital letters and lowercase letters. Okay. All right. So let's take a look here at A. So hopefully you see arrows. I see arrows in both directions. So that's going to be a line. Okay. In order to name it, I have to have 2 points. In this case, I do an R. And again, I cannot just leave it like that. I have to put a little line above it, again, with arrows on both directions representing that line. Okay. Second one, hopefully you see it's indefinite in one direction and it has an endpoint in the other one. So this one would be called a ray. And again, order matters here. I've got to start with the endpoint first. So ST, and again, I draw a little ray above it. All right, and I actually do want to point out one thing here. It actually depends upon which textbook you're looking at here. So hopefully you're looking at this and you see, yes, this is a plane. So we'll write that as a plane. Sometimes they do use one uppercase letter to represent it instead of an italic one, which is what our previous example was. So again, kind of depends on which geometric textbook, and I should have pointed that out to you earlier. But sometimes, again, this can be a capital letter here instead of an italic one. And I believe our book actually does do this, but other textbooks do not. Okay. So again, just make sure that you understand that as well. Okay. All right. So got another example here. Now this is two planes put together. We have the plane here. I would call this plane Q. It's green. It's like a horizontal one cutting through this vertical blue plane, plane R. Okay. So I'm just asking you to find some of these examples here. And there's multiple answers for these. Okay. We'll go through this one together. And then we'll have a couple that you guys are going to do on your own here, and then we'll check our answers. But we're going to name 3 points. I'm randomly going to pick 3 points. Now, points are uppercase. Okay. So if I look here, I see 1, 2. Now that is not a point. That's a lowercase letter. Here's another one. That's a point. And even though these are uppercase, those are referring to my plane. So I have 3 points here, D, E, F. And actually, that's all the points that there are on this one. Okay. Lines. We need to name 2 of them. Well, I actually see 2. I see this one. And there are actually no points identified on here, but I can label this line with this lowercase letter there. So I can label that as M. Sometimes it's italic, usually it is. Sometimes it's hard to tell, but it's a lowercase one. Okay, so that is this line right here that I just did. Now, do I see another one? Yes, I have this one. We can label or write this in 2 different ways. If I use the point on it, I would say DE, and again, I have to put the little line above it. Or if you'd rather, you could write line P. You don't have to write both. Okay, pick one. All right. And last but not least here, we have to name 2 planes. Well, we have the green one. I will label that, again, 2 different ways. Since I see the uppercase letter there, I'll name that plane Q. But I also see this one here, 2 different ways to name this one. I can name it by 3 points. So plane D, E, F, and again, points are always capital. Or I could have named it by the uppercase letter R. You don't have to write both. So again, I'm just showing you that there's a couple different types of answers you could have for this. Okay, either way would be fine. All right, I would actually like you to try this one. So now this one has 2 planes. I'm going to describe it, and then I'm going to let you guys try this one on your own and push play when you're ready to check your answers. We have a plane here. It's almost like a folded piece of paper, but this is a plane over here. I'll highlight it in blue. And then we have another one over here to the right. Okay, so again, go ahead and try this. Fill it in. Push play when you're ready to check your answers. Okay, so here are some answers. Now some of these can vary as well. Name 4 points. So I did T, U, S, and W. That's the only ones you can really have there. Name 2 lines. Well, there are actually only 2 lines. One of them, and I'm going to erase what I have here in blue because it kind of covers up the arrows a little bit. So I'm looking arrows in both directions. So this is one line, line L. And then I also have line N. Now notice I didn't name it line N. I named it line TU with arrows above it. But I could have also said line TS or line US. Or I could have reversed the order of those. So this one there's a few options of naming that. If you have questions about that in yours, we can definitely check those and ask in class about that. But there's several different ways to name that one. Name two planes. So again, we have two planes here. So we have this one that I did have highlighted in blue. Two different ways to name this one. I could have said plane J, but that's not what I did. I chose 3 points and I did plane TUS. Okay. The order of this could have been different too. It could have been SUT or something like that. And then I also have the one over here on the right, and that one is plane K, so I used it here. Okay. All right, so we got a few more definitions. Okay. Points are collinear. Okay, so let's look at this base word here. Linear, line. So yes, we're thinking it's on a line. So if points lie on the same line, they're considered collinear. Okay. So the root word for these next ones are coplanar. So plane. Points that lie on the same plane are called coplanar. Same thing again here. Now I only changed the wording here from points to line. As long as they line up on the same plane, they are considered coplanar. Okay. So let me give you an example of collinear. So if I have a line that looks like this, M and N are collinear. Point X is not collinear, and I look at them as a group, okay? So again, these two lie. So if I threw another point in there, and I even said that's, I don't know, K, I could say K, M, and N. So as a group, these all line on the same line. That's collinear. Okay? So let's draw some of these. Okay, collinear points. So they got to be on the same line. So I'm going to draw a line, and I just need to make sure I have 2 points on there, C and D. So they lie on the same line. Ooh, sorry, I accidentally erased that for some strange reason. Coplanar. So now I need to draw a plane. And I need to make sure all these 3 points are on this plane. So I'm randomly going to put 3 points on my plane. Again, coplanar. So I need to draw another plane. Now I'm putting 2 lines on this plane. So I'll have one maybe going this way, and I'll call that NR. Now the other one could be crossing, could be intersecting, it could be more parallel. Doesn't really matter, it doesn't specify, they just have to be on the same plane. That's what's meant by coplanar. Okay, so let's try another example with these, and then we're going to kind of wrap it up here. So again, we have 2 planes here. Okay, one kind of going vertically, one extending horizontally. We want to name 3 collinear points. So they have to be on the same line. Here's a point A. There's no other point on that line. So we're probably going to have to choose a different line. Well, now we have this line, and we have 1, 2, 3 points on it. They are all on that same line, M, so they are collinear. For points that are coplanar, so again, if I'm looking at plane T, I only have 1 point on there. I have a lot more points on this plane here, plane P, or plane, yes, plane P. No, plane S, sorry. So let's see, we need 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, oh, and there's our 4th one. So C, D, E, B. Doesn't matter what order I write that to. I could have wrote it in alphabetical. Doesn't matter. Okay. Now we want to name 2 lines that are not coplanar. So they can't be on the same plane. So line M and line N, not on the same plane. These 2 are though, line N and line P, that's on the same plane, so I cannot do those. I have to do the M and N. So line N and line M. All right, so our next activity, we're actually going to break in small groups here. For this, we're going to actually kind of come back together and do that. So please go ahead and pause this. If you would like to start the homework, that is fine, but otherwise you need to please check back in. And we are going to start a small group activity, and we'll talk through this as a class. Okay, but otherwise this wraps up our notes from section 1-1.